So humans use institutions largely in place of our lack of instincts. So what do I mean by that? Think of animals that have instincts, right? So you toss a cat, it almost always lands on its feet. Birds can migrate, many, many, many miles to somewhere they've never even been, but somehow they know how to get there. Right. So, what is an instinct? It's this knowledge or capability that is innate that you didn't have to learn. So, think about that knowledge that you did not have to learn. It sort of just came on board genetically, when you're born. Now, humans have some instincts, but they're very minor compared to other mammals. And further, when the human infant is born, it is considerably more vulnerable than most other mammals, at a similar stage of development. So, why is that? In part, the brain of a human is so big that some suggest that the baby needs to be born before the head gets even bigger and makes birth much more difficult. But also, we're so social that much of our sort of prenatal or developmental state takes place outside the womb, where we can be around social interaction. And that's been hugely adaptive for us. Now, humans have a few instincts. There's fight or flight response. Infants can suckle, and there's kind of a suction instinct. But when you compare the instincts that humans have to many different kinds of animals, it seems like we have the short end of the stick. So for being this advanced civilization, why would it be that we're born with so few instincts compared to other animals? And on one hand, it is a detriment. It is a loss to not have some of those onboard skills, but it's also allowed us to be much more highly adaptive. So instincts are evolved to match an ecosystem, right? So an animal lives and is born and is evolved into a specific kind of ecosystem. Maybe it's an Arctic tundra, maybe it's a rainforest, maybe it's in the ocean. But if you take that, animal out of that specific ecosystem and put it into another one that's considerably different, there's a pretty high chance it will not survive. Its instincts will no longer match the ecosystem, and so its advantageous sets of instincts are no longer advantages, right? It can't help it survive in this other situation. Now, we don't really have very many instincts, and yet you see human societies not only exist, but in many cases thrive in a multitude of ecosystems, even to the point of being underwater and, in a submarine or in space in a spaceship or something like that. But you find human civilizations throughout time in deserts and forests, in the Arctic, a whole host and variety of diets and ways of doing society. So where does this come from? And again, it's institutions. So we have institutions for instincts. Instead of having to know how to catch a certain kind of fish, like an animal might have an instinct to do, we can build a set of institutions, some kind of factory farming or chain of restaurants or distribution system, grocery stores, right? So we set up these institutions, we chain them together, and they solve societal needs for us. It's super complex compared to instincts, but it means that we don't have the same ecosystem limitations that other animals have. If I were to argue, one of our most powerful instincts is probably the instinct to build institutions.